Good afternoon. Today's December the 19th. I'm here at Daweswell Truck Stop. You can see the truck backing up behind me. You may be able to hear him or her. You can also see the chapel directly behind me. Just want to pray God's blessing on your life and just pray for all the truck drivers and their families out there keeping America moving by moving all the supplies and fuel and everything like that. So just thank you all for doing what you do. We're picking back up on the Sermon on the Mount. We're back in there. I know I took a long break. Glad to be back on the Sermon on the Mount. Today we're picking up right after the Golden Rule, which we talked about last time. We'll be talking through Matthew 7, verses 13 through 23. There's three, I would say, warning signs that Jesus holds up. This is how I kind of view it. Jesus is giving a warning to, hey, you need to take the narrow gates and the narrow road. And then he says, watch out for false prophets and for false teachers. And then he says to watch out for false disciples. So I'll post that up on the video. As I read, you can follow along. Enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus by their fruits you will recognize them. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, or in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, evildoers. I pray that God's word will bless your life and help guide your life, and may we be open to what he has to say to us today. As I said at the beginning, I really feel like this is a warning sign that Jesus is holding up to us and to his disciples. And I'll put on the screen a couple of signs. These are some road signs that you may see, and if you see them, you want to do a U-turn and come back the way you came and get back on the right road. And that's kind of what Jesus is doing here. Interesting, in verse 14, in the Greek, I believe it's pronounced odos. And the word can be translated way or road. In this case, it's translated road. We looked at last week, I believe, at the end of chapter 12 in 1 Corinthians, Paul's talking about the spiritual gifts. But then he says, let me show you a more excellent way, or a more excellent road to walk down. And that's when he gets into the love chapter. He's saying in chapter 12, there's all these spiritual gifts, and it's good to desire spiritual gifts. But he transitions to chapter 13 with, hey, I'll show you a more excellent way, a more excellent road to walk down. And just a little bit about the love chapter. It says, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. What is this road, this gate that Jesus is talking about? Well, we just back up one verse, and there you go. We had the golden rule. The golden rule, as we said last week, was, so whatever you wish that men would do to you, do so to them, for this is the law and the prophets. And like I said last week, the golden rule, it's in there in the whole Sermon on the Mount. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is talking about living kingdom, God's kingdom values and principles. And the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do to you. And this sums up the law and the prophets. Jesus said that phrase in another way too, or in another time. Someone asked him which is the greatest commands, and he said, one, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and two, to love your neighbor as yourself. And there again, he says, for this sums up the law and the prophets. So this is the more excellent way, and this is the narrow gates, and it is the narrow road. Just a personal story, and I hope this helps maybe depict this story that Jesus is sharing. And some of this is just my opinion, but I really believe it's relevant, and it really applies to what Jesus is saying. I'll hold up the warning signs again. As I said, if you see yourself going down these roads, it's good to turn around. Warning signs are good because they help remind you of, I guess, the right way of living life, but they also prevent you from going down a wrong road. Well, personal story, in my Army career, like I said before, I was in the Army from 97 to 2020. In the Army, we had a lot of briefings and trainings that were prepared and given to us. And I really think most of the trainings and briefings were given because somewhere down the road, somebody did something that they weren't supposed to. So then, hey, we're going to push this information out just to make sure that no one else does the wrong thing. And some of the trainings we would receive would be like, and this is in no particular order, and there's many more, but inappropriate relationships. You know, let's say with recruiter and recruitee, or trainer or trainee, or different ranks of different soldiers, but just having the appropriate relationships. 2, sexual harassment. It's definitely a no-go, but it was briefed on because unfortunately it happened. Security leaks, you may know this saying, loose lips sink ships. So we were always reminded and trained, hey, always keep a lid on information. And okay, you're not supposed to be drinking and driving. So these were different warning signs that the Army always would push out and always go over to help soldiers in order for them to stay on the right and go through the narrow road, for lack of better words, and just to kind of link it back to Jesus' warning signs here. And my personality is I tend to over stress about things, making sure that I don't violate any procedures and regulations or guidelines. And I probably overstressed a little bit about that stuff. There seem to be so many rules that it seemed to be really easy to break one without even knowing it. It'd be easy to live in a state of fear, and maybe there were times in my Army career, depending on the situation that I was in, let's say recruiting for instance, you know, you represent America to the civilian population, so you got to really make sure that you really display the Army values and always keep the trust of the American people. Well, it'd be easy for me to always kind of stress and focus on making sure that I'm not doing things wrong, versus just living in joy and just living life right, you could say. Well, a couple reassuring leaders in my Army. I can think of quite a bit of leaders in my Army career, and I really am thankful for them. But they would say, hey, Sergeant Bivens, you don't have anything to worry about. They would say, hey, your heart's always in the right place, so don't even worry about it. A lot of this stuff isn't even for you. And that was always comforting to hear. You know, hey, your heart's in the right place. Don't even stress about all of this, all of these warnings. You know, kind of like, hey, these warnings, if it you may have heard over your life. Hey, if it fits, you know, let it apply to you and listen. But if it doesn't fit, or if it doesn't apply to you, just let it go over your head. Sometimes you may hear. So So I link this back to Jesus' teaching. You know, it's good to have warnings. Like I said, warnings are good, but just in my opinion, I really think Jesus, he's, he speaks many a time, I come to bring you peace. And he says, hey, if you're weary and heavy laden, come, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. My burden is easy, and my yoke is light, I believe. And he says, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. So Jesus, I really don't believe in my heart of hearts, and I don't believe the Bible teaches that we are to fear. In the Old Testament, and even in the New Testament, I would say the fear that it talks about, that is the beginning of wisdom. It's a fear of like awe and reverence. It's awe and reverence that you would pay to the King. But we live with the King who loves us. He loves His creation, and He really desires that relationship. He doesn't want us to live in a state of fear, but in a state of joy and love and union with Him. Hello, it's me again. I'm inside the chapel. It's getting dark outside and it's getting a little cold. But just wanted to share one more thought, and just wanted to go back to the golden rule. So we ended, I was talking to you about not trying to find the perfect formula to follow, or to make a list, but Jesus keeps it simple. Although it may not be simple to follow, He keeps it simple with the golden rule: doing to others as you would have them do to you. And then, as I stated just a couple minutes ago, the two greatest commandments: love God and love your neighbor. And this fulfills all of the law and the prophecy. Now Jesus holds up these three warning signs that we mentioned in verses 13 through 23. But just want to go back to the golden rule of doing unto others as you would have them do to you, meeting people's needs, and just how it's not a perfect formula to follow, and it's not a list you're following, it's a person that you're following. Very interesting. The word, as I stated, for way or road in the Greek is odos. Well, when Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, when Jesus said, I am the way, it's the same word. He is the way, He is the road to walk on for eternal life. And in Matthew 25, He shares this story, and I've shared it before, where Jesus told the people, He welcomes them to heaven and says, thank you. When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat, and when I needed clothes, you clothed me. And to my astonishment, the people asked, and they said, well, when did we see you hungry, and when did we see you thirsty? And Jesus said, when you did it to the least of these, you did it to me. I hope this clarifies any misunderstanding, and so just focus on that golden rule, and keep your heart in the right place, and live in joy and love. And may God bless you. Again, if you have any questions, just shoot me an email. God bless you. Thanks for watching.